The ball was at his feet, and the goal was open, and 53 minutes of a World Cup quarterfinal had been building toward exactly this moment. The space, the angle, the goalkeeper slightly off his line. Everything aligned in the specific way that 30 years of football intelligence tells you to shoot. Every player in the stadium, every person watching on a screen, every analyst and commentator and fan who had spent their career learning to read these moments knew what came next. Cristiano Ronaldo was going to shoot. It was the only possible thing. It was what this moment existed for. He stopped the ball. Not a touch to set himself. Not a slight adjustment of position before the strike. He stopped it. Completely. Put his foot on top of it and stood still and looked up, and in the fraction of a second before anyone understood what was happening, the goalkeeper, who had also read the moment and had been committing to his dive, had to arrest his movement and recalibrate, and the defender who had been tracking the shot angle had to stop, and the entire geometry of the situation had to rearrange itself around the fact that the most predictable thing had not happened. The stadium made a sound. Not a cheer confusion. The specific noise of 80,000 people simultaneously encountering something that contradicted their expectation. And then Cristiano Ronaldo did what he had actually stopped for. And nobody who was present in that stadium, not the players, not the officials, not the journalists in the press box who had covered hundreds of matches and thought they had seen everything football was capable of producing. Nobody understood it until afterward. But here is what it meant. And why it changed everything. But first, here is what had been happening in the 53 minutes before that moment. Because the stop did not come from nowhere. Nothing Ronaldo does comes from nowhere. Portugal had been controlling the match. Not dominantly. The opposition were organized, disciplined, the kind of team that makes space expensive and transitions dangerous and forces the team with the better individual quality to find solutions rather than simply expressing it. 1-0, a goal from a corner in the 21st minute. Portugal had been working, had been creating without converting, had been moving the ball with purpose, but finding the final action blocked or misplaced or simply unlucky in the way that football is sometimes simply unlucky. In the 34th minute, a young Portuguese midfielder, 21 years old, his first World Cup, a player who had come into the tournament with enormous expectation and had spent the first 3 matches meeting it with performances that suggested the expectation was correct, had made a mistake. A bad one. The kind that happens when a young player in a high-pressure environment tries to do something beyond what the moment requires, when the weight of the occasion produces a decision that the player would not make in training, that the player would recognize as wrong a second after making it. He had given the ball away in a dangerous position. The opposition had countered. The counter had been stopped barely, by a combination of defensive effort and goalkeeper quality, but the mistake had been visible. Had been analyzed immediately by the broadcast team, replayed 3 times, dissected in the way that modern football dissects everything that goes wrong. The young player's name was Fabio. And in the 34th minute, after the counter had been stopped and the danger had passed and play had resumed, he had done something that Ronaldo had noticed and filed and not addressed in the moment because the moment did not permit it. He had stopped running at full intensity. Not obviously, not in a way that a casual observer would have spotted. But Ronaldo had spotted it. The specific slight reduction in his pressing, the half-second of hesitation before his defensive transition, the body language of someone carrying something that was affecting their movement without their full awareness. He was carrying the mistake. And it was slowing him down. Now here is what happened between the 34th minute and the 53rd, and why Ronaldo was watching Fabio more than he was watching the match. He watched him work through it. That is what good players do when they make mistakes. They work through it. They absorb the damage. They find their way back to full engagement through the process of continuing to play. Some players do this quickly. Some players take longer. Some players, in specific contexts, first World Cup, high pressure, under the scrutiny of the biggest audience of their career, take longer still. Fabio was taking longer than he should have. By the 45th minute he was better, the hesitation had reduced, the pressing was closer to full intensity. But not completely. Something was still slightly off, the specific residue of a mistake that has not been fully metabolized. Ronaldo had been watching. had been tracking this in the part of his mind that runs parallel to his active participation in the match. The part that has been observing and processing football for 30 years and never fully switches off even when another part of him is executing at the highest level. At halftime, he had said something to Fabio. Brief, direct, in the specific way Ronaldo says things when he has decided they need to be said. He had said, "The mistake is done. It is not in the match anymore. It is only in your head. Get it out." Fabio had nodded. Had said, "I know. I am trying." Ronaldo had said, "I know you are trying. Stop trying. Just play." Fabio had looked at him. Had said nothing more. Had gone back out for the second half. By the 53rd minute, he was still trying. Here is what Ronaldo saw in the 53rd minute, the specific thing, the detail that nobody else on the pitch was positioned or focused enough to see. He received the ball in space. The goalkeeper slightly off his line. The angle good. Everything pointing toward the shot that the situation demanded. And in his peripheral vision, at the edge of what he could see without turning his head, he saw Fabio making a run. Not the tentative, slightly hesitant run of the player who had been carrying the 34th minute mistake for 20 more minutes. A real run committed, full speed, the specific quality of movement that comes when something internal has finally released and the body is free to do what it knows how to do. It was the first real run Fabio had made since the mistake. Ronaldo had approximately half a second to process this. He stopped the ball. Not because the run was in a better position. Ronaldo's position was objectively better. The shot was cleaner. The probability of scoring was higher from where Ronaldo stood. He stopped the ball because Fabio needed that run to mean something. Because the first real thing you do after carrying a mistake for 20 minutes needs to be rewarded, or the next time you hesitate before making it will be worse, not better. Because football is played in the body and the body remembers what it is taught, and what Fabio's body needed to learn in the 53rd minute was that running is worth it. He waited. 1 second. 2. Fabio arrived at the position his run had taken him to. Ronaldo played the pass. And here is what happened next, and why the 80,000 people who had made the sound of confusion made a completely different sound 4 seconds later. Fabio received the ball. He was in a good position, not as good as Ronaldo's had been, the angle slightly tighter, the goalkeeper now better placed than he had been. But good enough. And something in the quality of his first touch, the specific way he controlled it, the immediate clarity of the next decision, told everyone watching that this was different from the 34th minute. This was the player they had expected to see at this World Cup. He shot. The ball went in. 2-0. The stadium erupted. The celebration was immediate and total, the specific overwhelming joy of a goal that has arrived after 53 minutes of pressure and near misses, and the particular anxiety of a one-goal lead that felt more fragile than the scoreboard suggested. Fabio ran. His teammates ran toward him. And in the middle of it all, Ronaldo, who had given the pass, who had stopped the ball in front of an open goal to give it, was not in the center of the celebration. He was slightly apart from it, watching, not from sadness. Not from any sense of sacrifice or cost. From something that looked, to the people nearby, remarkably like satisfaction. Not the satisfaction of scoring. Something quieter than that. The satisfaction of having seen something clearly and acted on it correctly. Here is what happened in the dressing room at halftime, the conversation that explained everything about the 53rd minute. Fabio had come to him. After the goal, after the final whistle, after the celebrations had moved through their phases and the squad was in the dressing room processing the win. He had come directly to Ronaldo with the slightly dazed quality of someone who is still inside something too large to fully process. He said, "You had it. The goal was yours. Why did you stop?" Ronaldo looked at him. Said, "Did you feel the difference? Between the run you made and the runs you made after the 34th minute?" Fabio thought. Said, "Yes. That one felt different. Like I was actually running instead of trying to run." Ronaldo said, "I know. I was watching." Fabio said, "You were watching me? During the match?" Ronaldo said, "I watch everything. That is what 30 years does. You cannot stop seeing once you have learned to see." A pause. Fabio said, "But you gave up a goal. A World Cup goal. To make a point about a run, Ronaldo looked at him and said something that Fabio, 2 years later, when he was one of the most important players in European football, would describe as the sentence that changed the way he understood what football actually was. He said, "It was not a point about a run. It was a point about what happens after a mistake. The mistake was yours. The recovery was yours. I just made sure the recovery meant something. The goal was always yours." But here is what nobody in that dressing room knew, what was happening inside Ronaldo during those 53 minutes that made him see Fabio so clearly. He had been Fabio. Not in this match, not in this tournament. 23 years ago, in a match he could still describe in exact detail, the date, the opponent, the minute, the specific weight of what he had been carrying when he made his mistake and could not put it down. He had been 18. Early in his career at Sporting CP, in a match that should have been ordinary, but that had become, in the space of one bad decision, a test of something he had not known he was being tested on. He had made an error, had given the ball away in a position that led to a goal. And for the next 40 minutes, the longest 40 minutes of his young career, he had played with the mistake attached to him like something physical, like a weight he was carrying on one side that threw his balance off and made everything slightly wrong. Nobody had helped him put it down. That was the thing. Nobody had seen it clearly enough, or had the language for it, or had made the specific decision to do something about it. He had worked through it alone, over 40 minutes, and had found his way out eventually but slowly and inefficiently and with more cost than was necessary. He had never forgotten that. Had carried it, the way you carry the lessons that came from difficulty, as something to be used when the situation arose. The situation had arisen in the 53rd minute of a World Cup quarterfinal. He had stopped the ball. Here is what happened in the press conference, and why one journalist's question produced an answer that every person in the room went away thinking about. The match had finished 2-0. Portugal through to the semi-finals. The post-match press conference was going through its ordinary phases, the tactical questions, the performance analysis, the what happens next questions that always follow a knockout win. And then one journalist, someone who had been covering football for 15 years, who had been in the press box when Ronaldo stopped the ball and had spent the rest of the match trying to understand what he had seen, asked the question. He said, "In the 53rd minute, you had the ball in front of an open goal and you stopped. You gave it to Fabio instead. Can you explain what happened?" Ronaldo looked at him. The room, which had been producing the background noise of a post-match press conference, went quiet. He said, "I saw something." The journalist said, "What did you see?" Ronaldo said, "I saw a player who had been carrying a mistake for 20 minutes finally put it down. And the moment he put it down, he started running the way he actually runs. And I thought, that run needs to end with the ball. Not the run I was making. His run." The journalist said, "But the goal, your goal, Portugal might have needed it later." Ronaldo said, "We scored 2-0. We did not need my goal. We needed Fabio to learn that running after a mistake is worth it. That is more valuable than one goal in one match." The room was quiet for a moment. Then another journalist asked about the semi-final. And the press conference moved on, as press conferences do. But the journalist who had asked the question sat with the answer for a long time after. And here is the final part of the story, what happened 6 months later that closed the circle nobody had known was open. Fabio was playing for his club. A Champions League match, the highest level of European club football, the stage that separates good players from great ones. In the 61st minute, he made a mistake. A bad one. The kind that happens when high pressure and high stakes combine with a moment of misjudgment. He gave the ball away. The opposition scored. He stood in his half of the pitch, processing it. The crowd noise around him, his teammates' voices, the ongoing demand of the match. And then something happened that he described afterward as the most important moment of his career. He remembered the 53rd minute. Not as an abstract memory, as a physical one. The feeling of that run. The moment when the 34th minute mistake had finally released and he had started moving the way he actually moved. The specific quality of arriving at that position and receiving that pass and scoring the goal. He remembered what Ronaldo had said afterward. The mistake was yours. The recovery was yours. I just made sure the recovery meant something. He started running. Not tentatively. Not the way he had run between the 34th and 53rd minutes of the World Cup quarterfinal. The way he had run after. Fully. Without carrying anything extra. In the 78th minute, he scored an equalizer. His team drew 1-1. It was not a perfect result. But the way he played after the 61st minute mistake was the way he played when he was at his best, and everyone who watched it felt it, and the analysts who studied it afterward used the word transformation without quite understanding what had caused it. Fabio knew what had caused it. After the match, he sent a message to the number he had saved under a name that felt slightly surreal every time he saw it. The message said, "I made a mistake tonight. I remembered the 53rd minute. I kept running." The reply came in 4 minutes. It said, "Good. That is exactly what it is for." Ronaldo put his phone down. He was somewhere, another city, another preparation, the perpetual motion of a career that was not yet finished and showed no signs of finishing on anyone's timeline but its own. Outside whatever window he was near, the world was doing what the world does. He thought about the 53rd minute. About the half-second in which he had processed what he saw in Fabio's run and made the decision to stop the ball. About the goal he had not scored. About the goal Fabio had scored instead. He thought about the 18-year-old at Sporting CP who had carried a mistake for 40 minutes with nobody to help him put it down. About how long that had taken to work through alone and how different it might have been if someone had seen it clearly and done something about it. He thought about seeing clearly. About 30 years of learning to see, not just the ball and the position and the tactical situation, but the people. The specific human beings occupying the positions, carrying what they were carrying, moving the way people move when something internal is affecting something external. That was what football had taught him. Not just how to play it, how to see it. And seeing it meant seeing everything, including the things that happened inside people that showed up in how they ran. He picked up his notebook. Wrote, "The most important thing I learned in 30 years is not a technical skill. It is this: when someone puts down what they have been carrying and starts moving freely, you will know. It looks different from everything else. And when you see it, you give them the ball." He stopped. Read what he had written. Then he wrote one more line. "Because the goal was never really mine anyway. It was always waiting for the person who needed it most." He closed the notebook. Put it in his bag. But before he put the phone away completely, he did one more thing. He opened his contacts. Scrolled to a name, not Fabio, someone else. A player he had been alongside years ago, in a different club, in a season that had contained a match very similar to this one. Someone who had made a mistake in the 30-something minute and carried it for 40 minutes while a younger Ronaldo had watched without knowing what to do about what he was seeing. He had never told that player, "I saw it. I understood it. I just did not know yet what to do about it." He did not call now. It was too many years later. The moment for that conversation had long since passed. The window for it had closed quietly without anyone noticing. But he held the phone with the name on screen for a moment, thinking about the lessons that arrived too late for the situation that taught them. About how the only thing you can do with those lessons is make sure they arrive on time for someone else. He had arrived on time for Fabio. That was enough. That would always be enough. Tomorrow there would be training. The day after, another match. The football continuing in its relentless, beautiful way, producing its moments, its mistakes, its recoveries, its 53rd minutes that nobody in the stadium understood until afterward. He was ready. He was always ready. That was the whole of it.